Hey, First Impressions, or I guess I should say guest services team, because that's what over time we'll be transitioning from being called First Impressions to guest services. Any business you go to, typically it's going to have guest services, not First Impressions. People wonder what that is. So across all of our campuses over time, we will become the guest services team. So I'm excited about that. I pray you're doing well. I pray that you're spending this time in a way that when you look back years later, you'll remember this time as a time that you drew near to God. You know, Psalms 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." And I don't know about you, but that is one thing that I'm thrilled that I'm able to have a little bit more time to do right now is just to be still. I want to challenge everyone to stay connected with the church. I've heard some people say that they're loving the online services and so forth, but I've heard some people say, I don't want to be a part of that. I'll wait until we meet back live. I want to encourage you to think about that, and because the Bible says that we're not to forsake the gathering of the saints. And we can't literally gather right now, but we can gather online, and we can gather and encourage one another and be challenged by our pastor, worship our God together, even if it's through a Facebook Live or a YouTube or going to the website and accessing it that way. I want to encourage you to do that. In fact, as our guest service, our First Impressions team, I want to challenge you to sit one and then serve one. Just like you do when we're at church on a Sunday. And what I mean by serving is going online and welcoming people, making comments, whether it's Facebook page or somewhere like that, or our online platform, and welcoming people. You may have the opportunity to pray for people, encourage people, make comments about pastor's message, just interact. But I also want to encourage you, there's so many platforms that you can connect at Faith Promise right now. For instance, if you're not in a small group, they're having an online group on Sunday nights. Encouraged to be a part of that. Even if you are in a group, you may enjoy that. Monday, we have Facebook Live where campus pastors are going live. I get to go live on Mondays from the North Knox page. Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we have a praise break. Our students are meeting on Wednesday nights as well through Instagram. We have Thursday, a live update from Pastor Chris at 7 p.m. Our kids ministry just prior to Pastor Chris at 6:30 p.m. But I think one of my favorite times, apart from our weekend services right now, is our Saturday morning prayer gatherings. It is so good. I want to encourage you to be a part of that. Travis asked if I would participate in a book study with you. The Comeback Effect, I know many of you have the book. If you don't have it already, I encourage you to get a copy or download a copy that you can read through an iPad or on your phone or whatever. We're going to be covering a chapter a week. We're on chapter 2 this week, and chapter 2 is on culture. It's not a job title. Culture, it's how to create a culture, not a job title. So, what is culture? Well, it's a buzzword, right? You hear about it in businesses. We certainly hear about it in the church world. But the definition in the book was culture is the identity of a people group. It encompasses their art, their food, their entertainment, their traditions, basically what we do, who we are, that is our culture. One of the authors, Jonathan from the book, gave an example of when he was a kid and he was a son of a missionary, and they were in Guatemala, and they would go to remote villages out where coffee plantations were, and they would minister to families there. And often they would be invited to individual families' homes. And he said one of the first times they went to a home, he was blown away. They went in, it was like a shed, like a hut, tin roof, dirt floor, one room. And he said that it blew him away because as soon as they walked in, the dad reached in his pocket and he pulled out a handful of coins and he gave them to his little son, his boy, and he sent him out the door. But what happened was a few minutes later, the boy came back and he had ice cold bottles of Coca-Cola in his hand, and he gave them to his guests, missionaries and their children. I think there was 5 of them, so pretty big expense for a family that was living in a dirt floor hut. And that was their entire living, what they had to live in. So brought those Coca-Colas back to them and served them. And of course, the missionaries didn't want them, but they didn't want to also offend this family, so they took them. And what was cool, though, as they told the story, was that that's what they came across everywhere they went. It didn't matter if they were in a home of a wealthy person or if they were in a home of a very, very poor person. They all did the same thing. They would send out for the Coca-Colas and they would bless them or give them those. That was their culture. You see, hospitality is not the job of our guest services or First Impressions team. It's our culture. These Guatemalan families didn't have to think about what they were going to do when some strangers walked into their house. They knew exactly what they were going to do, and they all did it. It's just their culture. It's what they did. You know, we can say that First Impressions team, or I guess I should say guest services, because that's what we will be called, has a culture of making people feel welcomed, making people feel loved and cared for. But in reality, if it's not shared across the entire team, and if it's not shared across our entire staff team, and pretty much across our congregation, then it may not actually be our culture. Maybe what we want to be our culture, but it may not actually be our culture. When something becomes part of our culture at Faith Promise, there's clarity. And what I mean by that is that it's going to have 4 elements. The book talked about that it's going to be seen by everyone, and it's going to be seen in everyone and what we do. But the book talked about there's 4 different elements, and I'm going to quickly go through those. The first element of culture is that it's pervasive. At Faith Promise Church, we want a culture of hospitality to be pervasive everywhere, literally affecting everything, all parts of our lives, all parts of our church. It's not just a team of people, we've talked about that, it's not just a team of people that are responsible for this, it's all of us. All of us are responsible for it. We all own making everyone who walks through the doors of our church feel welcome, feel special, literally rolling out the red carpet. So how do you know if you have a culture that's pervasive? If that's the number 1 element, how do we know if we've got it or not? The authors gave a good example of Chick-fil-A. An employee at Chick-fil-A is trained to say, "My pleasure." And the example given in the book was that people that work at Chick-fil-A, employees that work there, that becomes part of their culture at work, of course, but over time, if you talk to somebody that works at Chick-fil-A outside of the workplace, at their home or anywhere else, and you ask them or you make a comment to them, many times their response is going to be, outside of work, "My pleasure," because that has become pervasive in their lives. It's what they do, it's who they are. The second element of culture reflects an identity. It reflects an identity. That hospitality, taking care of people's needs, it's who we are, right? The book talked about their culture. Their culture is to escort or walk people to where they need to be. I've seen some of our ushers or some of our greeters at the door walk people through, then hand them off to an usher, making sure the names are given and make sure that they made to feel special. Hey, this is their first time here. Would you make sure they have the best seat in the house? And I mean, it's just cool to see what you guys are doing. So you guys get that with what the book was talking about. I've seen Travis, our leader of our First Impressions, I keep saying First Impressions, our guest services team. I've seen Travis, after service, when almost everyone was gone, in the parking lot with a pair of jumper cables jumping off somebody's car. But the point is, it's not about the job when people come into church. It's not about just making them feel special as they walk through the door or when they leave, even though we definitely want to do that. It's way more than that. It's part of our culture. It's part of who we are. It is definitely our identity. I saw Scott Suter go to one of our people's house here. One of our families just went through cancer surgery. And Scott and some other folks went over and just took care of some maintenance things, some building things that need to be done on their house. You know what? It's not about just caring for them while they're in the worship center there, but it's caring for them out in the community as well. And that's what it's becoming part of our identity. But you know what? It's not just about people seeing that we care. It's not just about our actions, but it's about people feeling it. And I dare to say, and I've heard so many people talk about the North Campus, that this campus is a warm, friendly environment. And you know why? It's because every one of you guys get it. It's because our staff gets it. It's because it's our culture that we will lay down our lives for other people. We will care and we will have empathy for them. You guys get it. It's your identity. I love that about our team. Number 3 in the book, the third element of culture is that it's valued from the top down. The book referenced churches where people who work on staff or even volunteer teams that felt like they were just, I think the words they said, they were like wheels in a cog, that they didn't feel valued, that their relationship with the staff or their relationship with other people, it almost felt like it's transactional, that it wasn't a relationship. Man, I pray that we are never looked at that way. I pray that you never feel that way. And I'll tell you, I'm imperfect, so I can very well make you feel that way, and I'm sorry if I ever have. But I want you to know, our volunteer teams, we want you to know that you're loved, and we want you to know that you're cared for. We want to provide you with the resources so that you can make ministry happen and be successful at what you do here at Faith Promise Church. We want to empower our teams. You know, I've been so pleased over the past year, as almost all of our serving teams at our campus have developed care structures. It's been a focus of ours. And the guest service team, First Impressions team, has been a primo example of that. Travis is our senior coach, and he's over the entire team, and he has been for several years, does a great job. But I challenged Travis years ago to start building other levels of leadership. In other words, put someone that's over the greeters. So now we have a coach of our greeters in Carl Lakin. Make sure we have somebody that's over our ushers. Scott Suter, man, is just running with that as the coach over our ushers. Our information area, we've asked, can we have a coach there? Doug Eastep's now leading there. We're trying to accomplish a care structure. We're trying to make sure those people are cared for. And not only is Scott caring for our ushers in the worship center, but he has team leaders that are doing that as well. So there's a care structure that's been built, and it's to make sure that we're fulfilling what God's called us to do. God said He called apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to equip the saints to do the works of the ministry. And you guys get it. You're doing it. I think it's awesome. The fourth area of culture is that it's valued with its resources. Some people say it like this: put your money where your mouth is, right? Or the Bible says it like this in Matthew 6. It says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. A couple months back, Travis asked me, it's before all this COVID-19 stuff, Travis asked me if we could do a luncheon for our First Impressions team. He wanted to do a training and a luncheon for them. And we looked at the budget, and he and I both knew there was very little money in our budget for our guest services team. But we looked at it, and we just made a decision. We're going to make it happen because we value our team. We want to make sure that you guys know we care for you, that we love for you. And we also want to provide training for you, just like we're doing right here. We want to make sure that you are trained, that you're cared for. So we pulled the trigger on it. And Suzanne and Travis worked together. Suzanne Spiva, our admin assistant that's over that area, just made it happen, man. It was awesome. But what I loved about it was so cool was not only was I able to be there and be a part of that, which I definitely want you guys to know that I value you and I want to be a part of that. But our senior pastor, Pastor Chris, even came and cast vision and loved on you guys and shared with you. I love that because we value having a culture from the top down. And Pastor Chris emulates that well. So, the elements of a culture. 1, it's pervasive. 2, it reflects an identity. 3, it's valued from the top down. And 4, it's valued with its resources. I want to close with this. I want you to close your eyes. Go ahead. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. And I want you to think of someone that you know, someone's very dear to your heart, somebody you love that doesn't know Christ. But man, there's somebody you love. Now, go ahead, close your eyes. I want you to think about them. Think of who that person is. Now imagine that you've invited them to church for years and years. You've wanted them to come, and you've asked them over and over and over again, and they finally agree to come to church. Your hope and your prayer has been for years that if they could just come to church, if they could just experience God in worship, if they could just feel the love of God's people, right? And we're definitely a part of that. If they could hear the good news in the gospel of Jesus Christ, if the Holy Spirit could just grab their heart, man, that they could become a follower of Jesus, that literally eternity for this person is at stake. Okay, now I want you to open your eyes. We all have the opportunity to create that culture. A culture that lays down our lives for other people. A culture that lays down its life like the way Christ did, the way Jesus did for us, right? A culture that puts the needs of others above ourselves. That we literally are the culture. We're towel bearers. Guys, in a virtual staff meeting yesterday, I had the privilege of hearing from our senior pastor, Pastor Chris, and Pastor Zach talk to us as well. And Pastor Zach quoted Pastor Chris, and he said this. He said, you can fight and you can claw to try to create a culture, but it will not work until you are willing to be the culture. Guys, you are towel bearers. You are the ones that are setting the culture. Here at Faith, you're helping set the culture here at Faith Promise Church of making sure that everyone that walks through that door, that we're treating them just like that one person that you thought of a minute ago, that you would want to hear the gospel, and you'd want them to feel special and loved and cared for. Hey, that's all I've got. Get the book, Check it out. It's amazing. I couldn't be more proud of you guys. I couldn't be more proud of Travis and the coaches and what they're doing and trying to go through this book and help you grow and help move the team forward. I love you guys. Can't wait till I can actually hold you and hug you and love on you guys. Y'all have a great day. God bless.